welcome to Real Talk, a new program brought to you by the Scott County Public Library. I will be your host, Lincoln, here and happy to dedicate it to taking some time to just going through our deep and vast library here at the Scott County Public Library of all of our collection of films, talking about different and old movies that maybe you've missed. I am so excited here to talk to you about two different films today that I really love, and hopefully you'll love too as we'll go along. Both deal with terror and manipulation within a family, and both I think are very scary from different periods of time, but both come together and I think will be classics and continue to be classics from years away. First up, I want to talk about a new classic. It came out late last year from Lee Waddell, and it's called The Invisible Man of 2020. It is starring Elizabeth Moss. You may know her from movies such as The Handmaid's Tale or the TV show Mad Men as Peggy Olson. In this, she plays a terrifying woman named Cecilia. From the very beginning, you're thrown into the mind of Cecilia and her terror and dread that she feels in a masterful opening scene where she's trying to escape from her own house. There's tension building in every single moment of that scene, from the water crashing against the opening cliff on the cliffside home, all the way to the ambient noises within the house as she crawls away, trying to get away from her sleeping husband. We don't know what her husband did, but we don't need to, because we already know from her looks on her face and the terror that she feels that she's trying to get away from something terrible. One of my favorite ideas about this interpretation from Waddell in this movie, The Invisible Man, is that he constructed just a beautiful film that he could have played as a madness narrative, having Cecilia as somebody that we might not be able to believe, but instead he went the route of empathy, immediately letting us know that what she's seeing is actually really happening, and for us, the viewer, to know that she is telling the truth. And I think it's just a perfect tell, showing that it expresses this empathy for her, and we're rooting for her even through this terrible time in her life. There's a particular scene that I won't spoil it for you. It involves a kitchen, and it's one of the most tense, probably the most tense moment in that film, and one of the better moments I saw of all last year. And it just thoroughly creeped me out, and I just love it. I just love being creeped out in general. I love horror movies, but I would love for you to go check it out here at our library. Next up, we have another movie I would like to talk to you about, and it's a little older. It is called Night of the Hunter, and it's starring Robert Mitchum. And he was in many movies many years ago from a lot of different westerns. But this time, it came from a director called Charles Laughton, and he was already an accomplished stage actor and film star at that time in the 50s, starring in movies from Beauty and the Beast, Mutiny on the Bounty, and Henry VIII. He was well known in different programs from the United States and in Britain. And at the time, he was kind of facing a different slope downward in his career until at a point in time in the mid-50s, he started doing these televised Bible readings where he would get on stage and just start reading books, passages from the books of the Bible and acting them out. And it was so captivating that his now, at the time, agent had called him and told him, "I would like to find a movie for you to direct." And so he had come around and he was looking for different movies, different titles, and he had come around to this book called Night of the Hunter, written by Davis Grubbs. It was a early 50s novel by Grubbs, and it kind of invoked a gothic fairy tale about these children trying to escape from this terrible man that was a preacher looking for money. So it was his first film, and he was looking for different stars, and at the time we had Robert Mitchum. And Mitchum had just now come off of his own 10-year contract with RKO Studios. And at that time in the 30s and 40s, many studios had a thing that they would call just a contract with their stars, where they would keep them, they retain them. And it was just the old way of doing business, was in the movie business at that time. Come in the 50s though, all of a sudden, the government had been cracking down on anti-monopolies against these companies, these different studios, and allowing different actors to break free from all of these 10-year, 20-year long contracts with these companies, with these production studios. So at the end of this contract, Mitchum had just been sitting there waiting and had opened his own production company with the likes of James Stewart doing his own production companies, and William Holden. So he had been sitting in his own office, and at the time Charles Loughton called him up and said, "Robert, I would like a different kind of picture for you, and it's called Night of the Hunter, and I see you in it. This is what I want from you." And so, okay, Charles, send me the book over and I'll read it. And so the next day, Charles sends him over this beautiful book by Grubbs, and he reads it within the day in his office, and he was so captivated by it because it was so different from everything else he was ever playing, from these 10-year-long contracts with these Howard Hughes type pictures and westerns, and it was just a really solid break from his career and something he was looking into it. And he was kind of invoked his own childhood growing up in the South and seeing that poverty and depression. So at that time, they come together and they worked and they created this seductive, terrifying preacher that is just so creepy and evocative of just this evil that comes out. What was created in turn has become one of my favorite films of all time. Although at the time it ended up being a critical and just massive failure to all audience, and just was one of those films that just came at the wrong time in the wrong place, but now years later has really found its audience. It also stars the legendary Lillian Gish and Shelley Winters, and just this gorgeous, beautiful film. It was with the cinematography from Stanley Cortez, who has a legendary career of his own that you can go and research at our library. Heightened tension and claustrophobic drawing of the eyes of the human drama contained within through expressionistic sets and darkened dioramas. It's truly just one of the most beautiful pictures you could ever watch, and it evokes such scenery of horror in everything that's happening and everything that's happened to the children as Robert Mitchum comes to find this money that he had heard about basically in a prison at the time with their father. I think it's just a beautiful film, and I hope you too, with one of these films of Night of the Hunter, or also The Invisible Man. But this week, everything here is available at our Scott County Public Library. You're welcome to come anytime to check them out. You can also find these episodes available now and in the future on our website, on our YouTube, and on our Facebook. This has been Lincoln, your host, here telling you today to watch more movies.